A blue-skinned god sits in meditation, holding a bowl of medicine. He vows to relieve illness and remove suffering. But Buddhism teaches the body is impermanent, that the self isn't what we think it is. In the 7th century, a Chinese monk named Xuanzang traveled to Bamiyan, Afghanistan. There, in a Mahasamgika monastery, he encountered teachings about a Buddha that weren't yet widespread in China. Bhaisajyaguru, the medicine Buddha. According to these texts, while still a bodhisattva, he made 12 vows, promises to heal the sick, feed the hungry, free beings from mental darkness. Upon achieving enlightenment, he established Viduryanirabhasa, the pure land of pure Lapis Lazuli. Later archaeological excavations at Bamiyan uncovered birch bark manuscript fragments from several Mahayana sutras, including a medicine Buddha text. Similar manuscripts were found in Gandhara, dating before the 7th century. These teachings circulated in Central Asia, gradually spreading eastward along the Silk Road. When Buddhist communities in China, Japan, and Tibet fully encountered them, medicine Buddha practice spread rapidly. By the 8th century, it had become among the most widespread devotional practices in the Buddhist world. But this created profound tension. Buddhist scholars and practitioners debated intensely. Some saw medicine Buddha as the natural expression of the bodhisattva vow. Others argued it risked turning Buddhism into a healthcare system with meditation as a side practice. And one of the monks who carried this practice across the sea went blind before he ever arrived. That story is where the healing question stops being theoretical. If you've ever been sick or watched someone you love suffer, you know this isn't abstract. What does healing mean when there's no solid someone to heal? Before we understand the controversy, we need to understand what medicine Buddha actually is, and to do that, we need to look at the larger world these teachings emerged into. By the time Medicine Buddha Sutra manuscripts appear, pre-7th century in Gandhara and Bamiyan, Mahāyāna Buddhism had expanded the Buddhist cosmos. No longer one Buddha, Gautama Shakyamuni, in one realm, Earth. Now, multiple Buddhas operating in different Pure Lands across the universe. Amitabha Buddha presides over Sukhavat, the Western Pure Land. Bhaisajyaguru presides over Viduryanirabhasa, the Eastern Pure Land. Pure Lapis Lazuli. These aren't gods in the theistic sense. Enlightened beings manifest compassion across different dimensions. If Medicine Buddha is a god you petition for favors, the entire framework collapses. As we explored in our video, if Buddhism has no God, who are they praying to? Devotion in Buddhism differs fundamentally from theistic prayer. Mahayana Buddhism teaches through upaya, skillful means. Not everyone starts with abstract philosophy about emptiness. Medicine Buddha is upaya, a form pointing beyond form. And that's exactly where critics attack it. So what did he actually promise? According to the Medicine Buddha Sutra, Bhaisajyaguru made 12 vows while still a bodhisattva. Here are a few examples from the vows. May my body shine like lapis lazuli, illuminating countless worlds. May all beings have limitless necessities. May those with diseased or disabled bodies become whole. May the poor and sick be freed from suffering. May beings be freed from false views and Mara's snares. May the starving be fed, then hear the Dharma. Notice the pattern. Physical and mental healing aren't separate categories. They're one continuum. You can't heal someone's mind while they're starving. You can't teach Dharma to someone in chronic pain without first addressing their suffering. Medicine Buddha's vows are bodhisattva vows. A bodhisattva postpones final nirvana to help all beings achieve liberation. If compassion is the core of the Mahayana path, then addressing suffering, physical and mental, becomes compassion expressing itself. The question isn't why would Buddhism have a healing Buddha? The question is how could Buddhism avoid addressing healing when beings are suffering? But the medical framework existed in early Buddhism from the beginning. The Buddha structured his first teaching, the Four Noble Truths, using medical terminology. First truth, the diagnosis, dukkha, suffering exists. Second truth, the etiology, tanha, craving is the cause. Third truth, the prognosis, nirodha, cessation is possible. Fourth truth, the treatment, magga, the Eightfold Path is the cure. In the Pali Canon, the Buddha explicitly says, "I am like a physician who diagnoses the disease of suffering and prescribes the treatment." The Buddha framed himself as a healer, not a god. He offered his teachings as remedies, not gospels. And there's another passage from the Vinaya Pitaka, the monastic code. The Buddha discovered a monk lying sick, neglected in his own filth. The Buddha personally cleaned him, cared for him, then addressed the other monks. "Whoever tends the sick tends me." So Medicine Buddha isn't breaking from early Buddhism. He embodies a teaching that existed from the start. He turns that medical framework and that compassionate mandate into a symbol you can practice with. The sutra describes his Pure Land as adorned with Lapis Lazuli, ground soft as a palm. Physical description or psychological metaphor? The text holds both. Every detail carries meaning. Blue skin, Lapis Lazuli. On the Silk Road, that stone was medicine. The bowl contains myrobalan fruit, actual medicinal plant. Seated in meditation, healing flows from equanimity. Two attendant bodhisattvas, sunlight and moonlight, continuous care. Compare this. Modern medicine promises competent treatment. Medicine Buddha promises comprehensive care. Body, mind, social conditions, spiritual state. Understanding Medicine Buddha requires understanding he exists within a non-theistic framework. He represents enlightened qualities, particularly healing as an expression of wisdom and compassion. The practice activates those qualities within the practitioner. But there's something puzzling. If Medicine Buddha achieved enlightenment, why does suffering still exist? Why do people still get sick? By the 8th century, Buddhist monasteries knew the answer, because they'd become the answer. Centers of medical care, and that created real tension inside Buddhist communities. By the 8th century, for many people in China, Japan, and Tibet, the monastery was the closest thing to accessible health care, and that changed what Buddhism was. We have records for this: texts, artifacts, institutional histories. Todaiji in Nara is one famous example. Temple complexes that included medical facilities and pharmacies. In Tang, China, the state periodically regulated monastic medicine, especially when it overlapped with official physicians. Buddhist sites yield surgical instruments, pharmaceutical tools, medical texts. Buddhism spread along trade routes. Monks encountered diverse medical traditions: Indian Ayurveda, Chinese herbalism, Greco-Persian medicine. Monasteries preserved knowledge systematically. The Bodhisattva vow demanded engagement with suffering. Medicine Buddha practice provided theological justification. Tibetan Buddhist doctors were taught there is nothing in the world that cannot be used in some form as a medicine. This wasn't prayer disguised as medicine. Buddhist hospitals combined herbal pharmacology, documented prescriptions exist, surgical procedures, texts describe cataract surgery, wound treatment, dietary therapy, meditation and visualization practices for pain management and mental health. Imagine a scene like this, described in different forms across medical manuals and monastic records. A farmer arrives at a monastery gate, feverish, unable to work. A monk checks his pulse. 3 positions, 3 depths, the way Chinese medicine taught. The pulse is rapid, thready, heat pattern. Then the urine, color, odor, even how the bubbles form and fade. Not mystical, just a different diagnostic language. The monk prepares herbs, bupalorum for fever, chrysanthemum for inflammation, licorice to harmonize. While the medicine steeps, the monk guides a brief visualization. See blue light entering your body, cooling the heat. A way to quiet the farmer's panic, to shift from fight or flight to rest and digest mode while the herbs work. The farmer stays overnight, receives 3 doses. His fever breaks. He makes a donation. Whatever he can afford is maybe nothing. The monk accepts either way. Some of it was chemistry, some of it was context. Some Buddhist remedies were pharmacologically active. Willow bark for pain, salicylic acid, precursor to aspirin. And when they weren't, the container still mattered. Calm, meaning, community, because those change physiology too. The meditation practices had measurable stress reduction effects. But this created theological tension. Buddhism teaches the body is anicca, impermanent, constantly changing. That attachment to physical health is one of the fetters binding you to samsara. Yet here were monks dedicating their lives to prolonging these temporary bodies. Buddhist communities debated intensely. Was this compassion in action? Or were people seeking cures instead of awakening? Attachment disguised as dharma. Both positions were defensible. In 735 CE, a Chinese monk named Jianjin was preparing to travel to Japan to establish Buddhist teaching centers. During his journey, he contracted an infection that damaged his eyes. Despite treatment from multiple physicians, his sight deteriorated until he was completely blind. He continued his mission, established Toshodaiji Temple in Japan, trained hundreds of students in both Buddhist practice and medical knowledge. His students documented that he taught with the same precision and clarity after losing his sight. Imagine being Jianjin, teaching, studying, practicing, all depended on reading texts. Then darkness. Permanent. If you've ever had your body betray you, you know that moment. The moment you realize, I can't negotiate with reality. Did Medicine Buddha fail him? Students remembered the loss of physical vision didn't erase awareness itself. So if Medicine Buddha's vow was to heal all beings, why didn't Jianjin's sight return? What kind of healing was Medicine Buddha actually offering? By 750 CE, Medicine Buddha had become widespread across Buddhist Asia. Some monasteries started to feel lopsided, less chanting in the hall, more coughing behind the screens. Some said, we've betrayed the Dharma. Others said, this is the Dharma. The answer was already in the sutra, one line most practitioners had been skipping right over. The Medicine Buddha Sutra states explicitly, even though cured by Medicine Buddha, beings will experience illness again, for such is the nature of conditioned existence. Most people read that as pessimism. Buddhist scholars read it as the key. Between the 8th and 10th centuries, Buddhist commentators began reinterpreting medicine Buddha practice. Nagarjuna's Madhyamaka philosophy, the middle way, was applied to healing. What if the disease isn't what you think it is? Nagarjuna's basic move is simple. When you see emptiness clearly, fixed categories loosen, and possibilities open. Apply that to illness. If there's no permanent self, whose disease is this? Vasubandhu's Yogacara school, the mind-only tradition, contributed insights. The Pure Land exists in consciousness. Tibetan commentaries integrated both. The healing happens in how you hold illness. Even though cured, beings will experience illness again. If you cure someone's disease today, they'll develop another eventually. Everyone ages. Everyone dies. Physical health is temporary by definition. Chronic pain gets controlled but persists. Depression gets treated but recurs. Modern medicine increasingly means living with illness. So what is Medicine Buddha actually healing? Medicine Buddha doesn't cure disease. He addresses attachment to being disease-free. So the target isn't the disease, it's the grip we have on the idea of being disease-free. His Pure Land, Vaidurya Nirbhasa, was reinterpreted in multiple complementary ways. Literal interpretation, an actual realm where physical suffering doesn't exist, maintained by traditional practitioners. Psychological interpretation, a state of mind achievable through practice. Clarity itself, represented by Lapis Lazuli blue. Non-dual interpretation, both simultaneously. A real place accessed through mental transformation. Matter and mind interpenetrating. Many practitioners held all three views without contradiction. Buddhism doesn't require choosing. In the West, we split healing into two departments, mind and body. Ancient languages didn't. Even our words medicine and remedy carry the idea of restoring balance. Tibetan Buddhism just never pretended the split was real. Modern medicine encounters the same challenge Buddhist hospitals faced. We're increasingly skilled at managing chronic conditions rather than curing them. Medicine means living with illness. Imagine being told you'll live with this pain for the rest of your life. No cure, only management. That's when Medicine Buddha becomes real. The opioid epidemic revealed the danger of annihilating pain signals. Elimination leads to addiction, tolerance, death. Medicine Buddha approach, don't eliminate the sensation, change how you hold it. If Buddhism teaches there is no permanent self, no unchanging you that persists from moment to moment, then who exactly is being healed? Anatta means this. It doesn't deny that pain exists. It doesn't deny that illness is real. It denies that there's a permanent, unchanging owner of that pain. The suffering is real, the body's deterioration is real, the treatment is necessary. But the solid, separate you experiencing it, the one you think is permanent and unified, that's what's being examined. The body sitting here isn't the body from 10 years ago. Every cell replaced, every molecule exchanged. The continuity is memory, pattern, not substance. The consciousness experiencing this moment isn't the same consciousness from yesterday. A related pattern, a continuation. Your body is a river of replacement, so much changes that continuity is more pattern than substance. Accepting this reality, seeing it clearly, releases you from the additional suffering of resistance. You don't need a lab to notice this. When you panic, pain multiplies. When the nervous system settles, pain becomes workable. Meditation can reduce inflammatory markers. We now know stress changes inflammation. Meditation changes stress. Your relationship to illness changes the illness. Medicine Buddha visualization works as cognitive reframing, which measurably affects physiology. But this creates a question. If Medicine Buddha's healing shifts psychological relationship rather than physical condition, why do millions still chant his mantra? Why visualize him? Why does the practice persist? To understand why the practice works, we need to look at what happened when Medicine Buddha traveled to different cultures. Because in Tibet, Japan, and China, he became three completely different figures, and all three versions reveal something crucial. In Tibet, Medicine Buddha multiplied into 8 deities and merged with shamanic healing. In Japan, he became a protector against mass epidemics. In China, in some regions, he became associated with prosperity, because health and livelihood were inseparable. Same Blue Buddha, completely different functions. What's actually being transmitted? When Medicine Buddha teachings reached Tibet, they encountered bone healing practices, pre-Buddhist shamanic tradition. The teachings merged with Himalayan pharmacology. Medicine Buddha became Sangye Menla, multiplied into 8 forms, integrated into the Gyushi, the 4 medical tantras, a complete medical system. And here's the part people don't expect. Tibet didn't just preserve this knowledge in books. They built a visual system, an atlas, 79 painted panels that map the body and the mind like a living blueprint. One painting is literally a diagnostic tree. First you observe tongue, skin, posture. Then you touch, pulse, 3 fingers, 3 depths. Then you ask, diet, habits, moods, pain. It's medicine taught as a visual interface, a way of making compassion repeatable. Tibetan approach, synthesis of philosophy and practice. In Japan, documented during Empress Suiko's reign, Medicine Buddha became Yakushi Nyorai. He merged with Shinto purification rituals. Function shifted from individual healing to collective protection. When smallpox struck Japan in the 700s and 30s, Yakushi devotion surged. Temples often became places of care and containment. This practice continues. Yakushi festivals during flu season today. Chinese Buddhism interpreted Medicine Buddha through Taoist Qi theory, vital energy flowing through meridians. Medicine Buddha became associated with wealth. Healthy body equals prosperity. By Song Dynasty, temples offered medical diagnosis plus fortune consultation. Religious figures become containers for cultural anxiety. Each society projected its primary existential fear onto Medicine Buddha. Tibet, harsh climate, limited resources, need for comprehensive medical knowledge. Japan, island nation, vulnerable to epidemics, need for collective protection. China, Taoist, longevity obsession, healing as life extension. Different forms, same underlying teaching. Change how you hold illness. So what do practitioners actually do? What does Medicine Buddha practice look like? The Medicine Buddha mantra chanted by millions. Bhaisajyaguru, often translated as eliminator of pain. Mahāyāna, great healing. Radza, king. Samudgate, completely accomplished. Notice what it's saying. It isn't petitioning, "Please cure my disease." It isn't begging for divine intervention. It's declaring a quality, healing as an accomplished reality, present, accessible. This functions similarly to other Buddhist mantras like the Heart Sutras, Gate Gate Paragate Parasam Gate Bodhi Svaha, gone, 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 beyond. Similar function. Language meant to reorganize attention, breath, and fear rather than petition an external power. The repetition, Bhikkhansi, Bhikkhansi, Mahabhikkhansi, creates measurable neurological effects. These aren't magic words, but words that demonstrably shift physiological state through rhythm, focused attention, and embodied meaning. Mantra repetition activates parasympathetic nervous system. The brain's self-network quiets. Rhythmic vocalization stimulates vagus nerve. Repetition bypasses analytical mind. The visualization practice. Visualize Medicine Buddha, blue body seated in lotus, holding medicine bowl. Blue light radiates from his form. Light enters your body, dissolving illness like sunlight dissolves darkness. The illness isn't fought, it's dissolved by being seen clearly. You recognize the Buddha isn't separate, you're visualizing your own healing capacity. You're activating qualities already present. Medicine Buddha practice often happens in groups, especially during illness. Chanting together for someone who's sick. Communal visualization. The social support itself has measurable health effects. Large studies and meta-analyses show social relationships impact mortality risk. Loneliness is physiologically damaging. Medicine Buddha practice creates community around illness. If you're wondering what a grounded Medicine Buddha practice actually looks like, it's usually this. You acknowledge the illness plainly, no denial. You do the treatment you have access to. Then you practice a few minutes of breath, mantra, and visualization. Not as a bargain with the universe, but as training your nervous system to stop panicking. If you're facing something serious, you don't practice instead of treatment. You practice alongside it. This isn't medical advice, it's a way of meeting what's already happening with less resistance. Some Theravada practitioners view Medicine Buddha as Mahayana mythological excess. Early Buddhism didn't need cosmic Buddhas. The Pali Canon's medical metaphor, the Four Noble Truths, is sufficient. Modern Buddhist reform movements, Western convert Buddhism, often rejects devotional practices. Secular Buddhism strips out supernatural elements, keep meditation, discard cosmology. Religious studies scholars debate, did Mahayana add features that contradict early Buddhism? Is Medicine Buddha Buddhism adapting to culture, or culture diluting Buddhism? The defense from Mahayana perspective. The Buddha himself modified teachings for different audiences. Upaya, skillful means. Buddhism has always adapted to local contexts, different forms, same essence. Devotional practices serve as entry points for those who aren't ready for abstract philosophy. The philosophy remains consistent even if the forms change. Medicine Buddha doesn't contradict anatta, he's a teaching tool for realizing it. But for someone chanting the mantra while receiving chemotherapy, for someone visualizing blue light while chronic pain flares, the philosophical debate doesn't matter. What matters is, does this help me be present with what's happening? The body doesn't heal in isolation. Your beliefs about your illness, your stress levels, your sense of meaning, your social connections, these aren't decorative extras. They're part of your physiology. Your beliefs about your prognosis predict outcomes independent of disease severity. The placebo effect isn't fake. It's proof that consciousness shapes biology. Buddhist practice has always treated mind and body as interlinked, long before modern medicine had language for it. The mantra, the visualization, the community chanting. These are practices for shifting your physiological state by shifting your psychological state. Buddhism was working with consciousness affecting biology 17 centuries before we had the science. But the deepest insight isn't just historical curiosity. It's about what remains when the body fails. Medicine Buddha may be the most honest healing deity in religious history because he never promised to save you from impermanence. Medicine Buddhas function across all interpretations. He doesn't grant wishes, he changes what you wish for. He doesn't remove pain, he changes your relationship with pain. He doesn't prevent death, he reveals what persists through death. Buddhism expanded the definition of healing beyond the merely physical. Remember the Chinese monk who went blind in 735 CE? Jianzhen. His students documented his teaching after blindness. He transmitted something his sighted students couldn't see until they watched him. Losing his physical eyes revealed something. Vision isn't who you are. The seeing persists even when the eyes don't. His blindness became his teaching. Students who trained with him recognized the deepest healing isn't restoring what was lost. It's recognizing what was never lost. That's the Medicine Buddha transmission. Western medicine excels at acute care, struggles with chronic illness, because chronic illness demands answering. How do I live well while sick? Medicine Buddha practice addresses what Western medicine often ignores. Leading hospitals now integrate meditation into treatment protocols. The science validates what the practice always showed. You don't need to believe in Medicine Buddha as a cosmic entity to benefit from the practice. The visualization with mantra functions as cognitive reframing, proven by modern psychology to affect stress response, pain perception, immune function, accepting illness as part of life while still seeking skillful treatment. This isn't rejecting Western medicine, it's adding a dimension Western medicine lacks: the psychological, social, existential context that affects outcomes. But here's the ultimate teaching. If there is no permanent self, no unchanging you that persists moment to moment, then who is sick? What you call yourself is just the 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness, arising and passing. What you call yourself is a process. You can't break what was never solid. What was wrong was never the fact of change, it was the belief that change shouldn't happen. That belief is the hidden disease. Medicine Buddha targets the illusion that the body exhausts who you are. He exposes the belief that suffering means you're broken, and he softens the terror that comes from mistaking what changes for what you are. Medicine Buddha's blue light isn't entering you from outside. It's revealing what was always there, the luminous, empty, unbreakable nature of awareness itself. The Japanese emperor was right to worry in 712 CE about Buddhism, focusing too much on healing bodies. People might stop at physical healing, might mistake the medicine bowl for the medicine, might think, if I'm cured, then I'll be okay. Medicine Buddha's teaching is the opposite. You're okay now, even sick, even dying, even in pain, because the you that seems broken was never the solid, separate thing you thought it was. In a world obsessed with optimization, biohacking, and living forever, Medicine Buddha offers something more radical: permission to be mortal, permission to be sick, permission to heal without needing to be fixed. Because what was being healed all along wasn't the body. It was the belief that the body needed to be permanent to be okay. The blue-skinned god with the medicine bowl isn't offering you eternal health or miraculous cure. That you were never broken, only challenged by change, and change is the rule. And maybe that's what healing always was. If this exploration of Medicine Buddha deepened your understanding of Buddhist healing, let us know in the comments. What's your relationship with illness, with healing, with the body's impermanence? For more on Buddhist approaches to suffering and impermanence, check out our video, If Life is Suffering, What's the Point of Living?, where we explore Buddhism's radical answer to existential questions. Subscribe to Buddha's Wisdom for videos that bridge ancient Buddhist teachings with modern life. Stay wise and don't be afraid of change.